Good morning all. To set context right for this particular session, this is about the empowering developer productivity. Okay, so we will talk about the business drivers. Okay, because that is what is required for us to know why we actually uh, want to do or empower the developer productivity. Okay, then know about what exactly is required by a developer on cloud. Okay, so for that, as we have to know the developer role on cloud and what tools and technologies they will require. Finally, once we know the role, obviously, as we may be coming from the different backgrounds, so what are exactly the technology related challenges and how we move further on those particular challenges is what we'll look at. And finally, once that particular is done from tools and technology and we have set the standard right, then obviously we will look into how we can empower the developer productivity and what are the tools we can use on that. Okay, and finally, coming to building the innovative solution is think about cloud that anything can come your way. It is not just thinking from a product perspective. You have to think from complete solution perspective. Okay, so that is what we will discuss in this particular session. Okay, so session takeaways will be obviously the clear understanding of your roles and responsibilities on cloud and what is changing from what we are doing traditionally, and then obviously learning about the cloud platform and then working on some of the standard tools and how do we improve that productivity. Finally, about functional scenarios, because that will set your base right of what is available in cloud and what are the tools and technologies you can use right away. Okay, so that is the agenda for this session, and the upcoming session will be on developing your service oriented architectures along with microservices. So that will be on 30th of August that we are planning. So now let's get started on this. So first of all, while we say this is important, we should have some stats behind this. Okay, so if I have to see from the business driver perspective, this is what the leaders have to say. So 75% of leaders say the developer experience is very important for their business strategy execution. And few of them say if they have to deliver or compete in market, they obviously have to release the software quickly. And third one is obviously related to one-on-one experience of what we can do to enable the developer that is towards this end. Okay, so if the developer has all tools and technologies, he or she will be able to deliver the good customer experience. So this is what are the business drivers. And this stats is being taken from Forrester. Okay, so the Forrester is a source for these stats. Now, okay, the leaders have this vision that yes, the business strategy execution is dependent on developers, or the developers play an important role for the business strategy execution. But looking from a developer's point of view, we also have to see what are the challenges they face on ground. Okay, so these challenges can be based on the process. These challenges can also based on the technology. So in this particular, what you see marked in green are related to technology related challenges, and something what you see in gray are process related challenges. Okay, so if I have to give you with this particular example, legacy platforms and developer tools, because most of us will be in hybrid or are in hybrid as of now. So obviously we will have a legacy platform and we have to live with it. Similarly, making those tools work or from an integration per se, there is no one solution fits all, right? So you have to think about what we can do more about integrating them with our existing solutions or workloads. Similarly, the most important what I see is the differentiation between what if I have to change from monolithic to microservice or service oriented architecture, what I will need for that. That is what the complexities we will be talking here in this particular session. Okay. Similarly, if I have to talk about what are the common tools and landscapes available, so that is what we'll be talking here from this app development per se. Okay. And finally, obviously, we cannot do without security. That is the prime most concern for all of our customers, that obviously security has to be taken care, and obviously the automation from DevOps CI/CD. Okay, so this is what you see from the technology and tool challenges as of now today. To map this to what we can do is our another stats. Okay, so whatever we had said about the challenges, what we can resolve as of now is obviously we can give them some deployment or automation tools. Then obviously, as we are working on open source, most of us are on open source, so we have to use open source software. So we are today more of a composers than actual developers. We do the development to a certain extent for the customization of that, but ideally it is composition plus the development work what we do. And at the end of the day, what we should provide you so that you can deliver, whether that is an infra as a service, whether that is a PaaS as a service or a SaaS as a service, what you really need to enable yourself on the cloud as on date today. Okay, so these are the current business drivers what we see, and as you see the stats is from the Forrester. So they clearly says from the business perspective what we have seen from the drivers, and then from the tools and challenges which the developer face today, and finally what we can provide to developer as on date today. Okay, so that now we have to summarize this in a form of what this will look like for a role of a developer on cloud. So if you see, expectation is obviously if we are working on cloud, we should know about the cloud platform and the services or workloads whatever running on that. On top of that, we need a knowledge about how we can exactly classify that for this particular requirement. We'll be reading whether monolithic, service oriented or microservice architecture. How to decide on that is what we have to decide on. Similarly, if you are working on a particular language framework or you are doing any coding, then obviously that has to be deployed on some services available on cloud or in hybrid environment. Then for that also there should be one-on-one mapping, and you should know the product and the services you have to use. Okay, and most important is the product or feature roadmap, because at the end of the day, if you are not using a long-term service or long-term support for that particular product, then obviously you have to do the deltas more often, and in that case you won't be able to deliver the other products faster. Okay, so that obviously you have to think of what is the actual roadmap of that product, or even considering what the customer has the vision about that product going down the line for around 5 to 10 years in that sense. Okay, the other important aspect comes to us is whether obviously, okay, we have a service oriented architecture or the microservice architecture. What are the APIs we have to expose and how do we connect with them? Because obviously saying the microservice bring the complexity as well. So how do we connect them? Whether we should use the REST, whether you should graph, or whether you should use gRPC, purely depends upon the choice what goes well from the development as well as the integration aspects. So these all are the different considerations, and unless we really have knowledge about those APIs, we won't be able to actually design the solution. Okay, so below down the line, you see the integration tools, and obviously the DevOps knowledge is something from an automation per se, and open source know-how is obviously the required by the developers as of now today, as we are composing more than developing at this point of time. And rest all, if you see from code development review, and this is the standard developer job which we are doing day to day. And obviously in coming years, the industry preference will also be taking precedence. So that is that is the reason we have written the industry domain knowledge is also preferred. Okay. So in short, these are the role summaries. Okay. So I will just pause for a while so that you can look at this and then we move on to our next part. So right from your knowledge on cloud, then how do you actually collaborate in a cross-functional team? And then how much you or your organization is having automation in place? And then obviously the inner source culture of how we can make it available or make a cross-functional team where you can leverage or they can leverage your expertise is what is expected from a developer role. And while we are talking about developer, all cross-functional team members are equally important from an architecture per se for the solution design, but developer also has to be part of those discussions to make this what we have said from the business driver perspective. Otherwise, this will become like uh, again we have to coordinate and there will be collaboration challenges if that is not set right. Okay, so moving on. Now, this is to help you on which specific tools or how do we make use of standard tools. Now, this is the survey again by the Stack Overflow. So if you see the products or the IDs which is being used, Visual Studio Code leads followed by Visual Studio. And there are other IDs like IntelliJ, Notepad, Vim. So this is to just give you, and by the way, this particular survey responses are given by professional developers. So if this 74.48, whatever you see, this is around 50,000 plus developers has voted for this. So around 38 or 39,000 has said that they are working on Visual Studio or they prefer Visual Studio as their standard ID. Okay, so this is helping us to take decision on what IDs which we should use and standardize these tools across our organization. Also, team, as I said, no one solution fits all. You also will have to follow your organization norm, but this is just giving you the best practice which is being followed across the organizations. Okay, so from this particular recommendations, as I've already said that votes nearly 39,000 of 53,000 professional developer recommend. And based on our experience as well, if you see Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio, and obviously as you are working on Azure as a cloud, Azure Cloud Shell plays very important role because first of all, it comes with all, you don't have to install any extensions unless and until required. I don't think like from my experience, I have this working uh, for both PowerShell as well as the Bash shell working very well across the solutions, across the workloads for the deployments. So it was very seamless rather than installing those particular on your machine, and it will also have some of the version conflicts in your machine as well. But this is always the latest which I use on cloud. Okay. Similarly, there is a product GitHub code spaces. I think most of you might be aware this is kind of a machine or the platform given to you similar to kind of Visual Studio Code available on web. Okay, so this also is a equally important product. If you are using GitHub, you can use this product for the coding as well. Okay, and few things like as you know about Windows subsystem for Linux, this is nothing but on Windows itself you can run or connect to a Linux machines remotely. So this is what is all about. And also with the current support, Docker Desktop also is installed on top of this rather than having Hyper-V as its base. Okay, and while you install Docker Desktop, within that itself for your microservices, whatever you are working locally on your machine, you can also enable Kubernetes so that this is considered as also the node. Your machine is considered as a single node where you can deploy those particular containers. Okay, so as of now, these are some standard tools across, and this will also give you the option of trying out. Start with few which are best, and then accordingly, I would say adopt and adapt to your org standards, whatever they have been using. Okay, so this is just giving you what others are using across the globe, and then obviously make your decision on behalf of that. Okay, so as we started, what developers need. So first of all, obviously you need a good tools and standardized tools. So this is what we are talking about here. Following on here, there is a lot of, as I said, about the technology know-how is also important. So first, let's look at from an application architectures or models. Today, I think unless we are working on some legacy, this is what I think from the monolithic per se, okay, is what we used to call desktops or legacy apps, like the way the presentation and our actually logic and the data access layers were tied together. Those were all the monolithics available as a single unit, and that is how you used to deploy, whether you are deploying on cloud or your own hybrid private workloads. Okay, so that is how you used to do that. But from monolithic, I think while we started consuming cloud as a service, we started with service oriented architectures. Okay, so here basically everything is split in individual services. That means what I'm saying is a presentation layer is separate from business logic layer, is separate from your data access layer. Okay, so the reason that has been done is because now you are not forced to use exactly the same scalability for presentation versus business versus your data access layer. All can be separate, and that is what we are saying. It is purely now a service-based approach. You can scale independently, and the examples for this is obviously your cloud services. Even if you are deploying database or consuming database as a service, that follows the SOA model. Okay, so we normally say monolithic to microservices, but ideally today in cloud world, we are actually using service oriented architecture at this point of time for most of our services. So microservice is not only the approach left, most of the services in future also will fit in SOA. And wherever required and wherever you require the scale, or I would say the while you have want to make the decomposition of complete application in the functionality specific, you can go for the microservices. But there's no hard and fast that you have to have everything on microservices. That is not the ask in future as well. You have to make a decision whether you want to make a service oriented architecture or you want to make a microservice related based approach for that particular solution. Okay, so also while we even say the microservice deployed as container, there's no hard and fast that they should be in container. It is only for making the better use of machines we want to make them container, and yes, this has been proved that this works very well to give us a good use of the hardware or the machine which we are using. And obviously we can have an isolated containers or those particular services or microservices installed on those workloads. So that is where we clearly says that whatever we have been doing, we have to decide on which path we want to take. And the example of microservice, obviously consider any shopping website, we do browse the products. Okay, we do have the payment standards. We also have a customer service related links there. All are different functionality of that particular service, right? And each of those functions are called as a microservice here. So think of a UI which has a different functionalities coming from different services is nothing but a microservice approach. Whether you really require that much scale purely depends upon the business needs. And obviously with when you do more, while we say the scalability and everything becomes streamless and then we are able to able to scale them independently, that brings the complexity as well, right? So that you have to take care of whether you have to go with service oriented architecture versus microservice architecture. And clearly database is a very good example where you will still use service oriented architecture versus microservices. Here we are not saying that database won't, but ideal goal for the database, the way it is being created or the way the product is available from whatever vendors we are working on, service oriented architecture is the best for them until we really find out the way for microservices for that. Okay, now moving on. Obviously here we talked about service oriented architecture and microservice, and both are heavily dependent on APIs, right? So that is the reason it is important for us to know about what are the API models available to us as on date today. So again, SOAP is a legacy as it was a protocol based and more dependent on XML. It is quite bulky and obviously it is a stateful service because most of our protocols, the way it was designed for communication for even point to point or for the data exchange, they were secure because they were using the interface based communication. Okay, so this is what the legacy we have from SOAP, Simple Object Access Protocol. Now coming to REST, the good part is everything now is represented as JSON, and we have the different verbs depending upon the action we want to have on that particular data. So it can be get, put, delete, etc. Okay, so these all the different verbs which you see, and they follow obviously the URL or uniform resource locator kind of the links. Okay, so for each function get you have one link, so similarly put. So for each of them, ideally what we are doing is we are connecting to that particular workload from which we want to fetch the data, and all the relevant details we are fetching without filtering on that. Okay, so that is what we do from the REST per se. And as a REST is HTTP standard, so these are the particular according the verbs we have, right, from the REST per se. And obviously this is a stateless, we can't have the stateful here because this is just for that particular instance of time. And giving the nature of HTTP or whatever we follow from the REST per se, we obviously need to secure them with some management gateway. Okay, so that is how what we require from the REST per se. Now, what is the advantage we are getting from Graph against REST is Graph is more towards a node base kind of. I have reached this particular point, okay, or node, then whether I run get, put, delete or whatever the verbs we will talk about from fetching or updating the information, then Graph actually does not require more API calls because we already have full control of node. It is on us now depending upon the actions, and we can also have a filtration on top of that saying that we only need a subset of information than fetching the complete information from that particular node. Okay, whereas in REST, each call, each API will fetch the complete details about that particular object which we are fetching. Okay, so here to save that, GraphQL is handy in terms of first of all node based communication and then getting exactly filtered query or pinpoint exactly what we need, the data or object related properties. Okay, again, this is based on the similar technology, so it will require the management gateways for securing your APIs. Now, something which is still in development is gRPC. Currently, this is the most secure framework, which is an advanced version of an RPC worked by Google. Okay, so that is the UC gRPC, and this is the HTTP2 standard. In spite of using text-based format, it is using binary format. Hence, it is more secure, as well as we are now working in a binary format. Obviously, the payload or the data itself is less, and that is the reason it is more faster compared to whatever the text-based REST and GraphQL we were using for the API communication or the data fetching. Okay, so these are the some architecture models which you will require while you work on any of those architectures. Okay, so team, at this point of time, we are setting the context right for the base of different architecture models along with the APIs. And once we actually do hands-on in subsequent sessions, while we have the tools also involved, and you will be able to see how easy it is now to actually do the specific task which we already know, or at least we have the base of that. It will be very easy for you to now go from SOA to microservices and select why you actually selected that for that particular solution. Okay, so we will work with all of these in a subsequent session. And similarly, as I've already stated, we will have a microservice and SOA based approach, design approach, and how we do the design solution in our next session. Okay, so we will cover that in very much detail with an example so that you can uncover everything from that person. Okay, so now we know the business drivers, what are making drive the developer productivity and why the developer productivity is so important. We know the challenges from the developers, and then we know obviously what tools and technologies they require. Okay, so we have now a standard tools knowledge and which IDs they should use. On top of that, the technology know-how, the basic technology know-how, I would say, rather than expert technology know-how, because that is what is required for you to at least collaborate on those solution and architectures. Okay, now this is what we have seen. Okay, that we need an application deployment automation, because today we don't want to waste resource to just do provisioning of the resources as the developer requires, or even developer raises the request to any teams creating that developer environments. They can do on their own with the help of these particular automation templates and also the compositions we already have. Okay, so that is what we are trying to make sure that you have the appropriate tools. Okay, and then on top of that, the automation DevOps is always playing the important role, whether whichever DevOps you might be using. Okay, so it should be able to solve your purpose for automation. Okay, so from the developer productivity tools, so here I'm listing few of the important tools which I have worked on. Like first, obviously, is an Azure automation. In our hybrid world, there has been always infra as a service. So for us, we have to collect the information. So we need to have a configuration and inventory management along with hardening those particular machines. So this helps a lot. This tools helps a lot on doing those particular things. Similarly, I may be doing some process automation in form of starting, stopping the machines at particular schedules, or maybe running some bad jobs. So I need some tools, or I would say workflows. So process automation helps me with that. And obviously the patch management is also an important criteria with which we do our maintenance work. So these three things are very important from an Azure automation per se, which we work day in day out with our hybrid services. Okay, similarly, there will always be any third party or any of our own private clouds where we do have to do an integration with those particular. So there we can use our low code apps like Power Apps. Similarly, if we want to put any process, like for say suppose I want to fetch any particular information at that regular interval, so I can fetch that and upload that to a data lake, or even update the database if that particular event happens. So these kind of alerts. Similarly, managing your hybrid Power Automate Logic App is again the workflow. Event Grid is more of a event driven workflows. or event related products you can use here. Okay, integrate here. Monitoring is obviously required. So this just are just a small subset of that. It can even extend to a complete monitoring security solutions as well, depending upon how you want to have your hybrid logs and everything built bring into the cloud for analysis purpose, even doing the analytics on top of that. So Azure automation is one of the important product you can use. Okay, and following that, obviously, if you are provisioning your environments, ARM and biceps is equally important because this gives you a complete whatever infra or whatever services you want to deploy. They can be deployed with these templates, and they can be, first important thing is they are reusable. That means the concept which I talked just some time back, like if you really want to follow an open source as a standard within your company, which we call as the inner source, reusability of your internal resource for other team members is also equally important. Okay, so you can use those templates. So now developers have those tools handy for them to really go and deploy those templates. So bicep again is a will give you the kind of a text base. You just put what exactly the resources you require, and it will populate that particular code for you. And then you build that code, it will generate the ARM template for you. Okay, so based on the parameters you have provided, obviously we need to provide parameters what the naming convention look like, similar along with the resources we are provisioning. So these are the only two things you have to take care while you actually configure the biceps. So hands-on, I think for this, in interest of time, I won't be able to do that. But obviously, while we do the hands-on labs in coming months, I would take each and every example along with the complete deployments of one particular architecture on Azure. Okay, so we will take care of the end-to-end architecture, and we will obviously have to give some more time. Maybe I think 3 to 4 hours we will require to do one particular solution deployment on Azure with all the basics, whatever which I am covering here. Okay, so this all is achievable. I think most of you might be doing this quite often in your day-to-day work, but just for whoever is new, I think they can see this is how it actually translate to any bicep file gets translated to ARM template in a JSON while you build that. And then obviously it is a resource providers and the resources which you are trying to deploy is how this particular template works. Okay, now third important tool obviously is the DevOps. Okay, depending upon which phase of you want, whether you are in planning, whether you are developing with your code, or you are even collaborating, or finally deploying to the respective services from Azure DevOps and GitHub are listed. Okay, so this is also very important for you to know what exactly your role is and what exactly you're working on. So ideally you will be using all of them at one point or other, but to give you a overall approach of what phases and what products ties to this is what I have shown this particular diagram here. Similarly, if you really want to select the best tool for each phase, this is the table. I can enlarge this bit. So today, when we talked about improving developer productivity, automation is must. Then what we are seeing here is DevOps helps us reuse the templates or deploy them along with the development, whatever work we do, so that that can be actually flow in a process of we build something, we test something, it is ready to go for the initial deployments. That is what we call our dev test environment. And then finally, after vetting it thoroughly, we go and deploy in our production. And to automate that complete process, we use DevOps tools like Azure DevOps and GitHub. Okay. Similarly, now coming to GitHub Copilot. Now this is very much talked about. This is also helps developer to fetch the snips of that particular functions or codes which you might be working frequently. You just have to, the way you see the comments, right? Get average runtime of successful. If you have the GitHub Copilot installed, it will go and fetch this function for you. Okay. So that is what is will help you. Like if you're writing the program, you don't have to, or some at times we mess up with these brackets. It will help you to take care of that as well. Obviously, if you are a good or expert programmer, you know all those things and you already take care of that, because even our IntelliSense does a lot of good work for us while you working on any ID. But to just to give you that what are the available programs, and this as of now works for C Sharp, Java, JavaScript, Ruby, even Go. So there are n number of as of now programming languages which it supports. What it does is based on your comments or what function you want to write, it can give you a step-by-step guidance, or it can fetch the complete function in one shot if it knows that this is what you're trying to do or there's no variations towards that. Okay, so GitHub Copilot is also one of the productive tool which you can use. Okay, so I'm just moving back to just give you some time to look at these. So till here, I think we have everything available for us to try, but something which is being announced on the build and will be available in future months is DevBox. Now, this is kind of a, you can consider this as a machine available to you, kind of which has all the tools installed and you are just have to consume that. And moreover, as you already have seen our Azure AD and the complete security, even from where to get access to this particular, whether this should be accessible from only on premise or only from the cloud or something of that sort, specific site related, those all things you can do uh, provisioning these workstations. And this workstations will work for all of whatever you required for in day in day out based on the projects. Okay, so in spite of using one particular workstation for all of your projects, you can have different workstations provision for you by your admins, you can say, or the provisioning teams, you can say, who will be actually helping you creating these out of box. Okay, so this will be kind of a, at this point of time this is in private preview, but if you really have to correlate with the existing solutions, you already have a VDI, right? So you can consider one particular catalog equivalent to one particular project, and then you provide that assignment to your team. Okay, so that is how this will work in future as well. So if you are working on any of VDI solutions, this will be now available to you out of box as a service from Microsoft as a DevOps. So what should be available? Complete hardening and access respective who will be accessing those machine and what developers needs. Similarly, obviously, ready to code and all specific tasks will be there available for you to consumption. Okay, so provisioning any workload, build any app using dev and repos. Ideally, this is a workstation, customize implemented for that project in simple sense. Now, on top of this, there's also one more which is released in the build was dev environment. Now, this is different than DevBoxes because DevBox provides you all tools and something from where you have to actually do the deployments or do your day-to-day work. But dev environment is something everything is deployed for you the way you want. That means if I want a specific development environment where I need app services, I need some of the AKS clusters, I need a specific database, even if I'm working on any particular data state, that particular service. So what this particular dev environment will be doing is it will pre-configure that environment on while you ask for that, you will get that particular environment completely ready. Now it is for you to just deploy or do kind of the end environment. Now you're ready to test your software on that particular environment. So this is how that will be. As I said, this is still in private preview. Maybe we are still working on that to make it as productive as possible. So this will take some time, maybe a couple of months until we do the public preview of this. And once it releases, I think I will show you the demo of this as well. But at this point of time, something which you can try out of box is all 5 of above. Okay, Copilot, DevOps, obviously Azure DevOps and GitHub. Okay, then Azure Automation. Okay, so this is all you can try out of box as of now. Okay, now till this particular point, we have talked about the business drivers. We talked about the standard tools along with some technology know-how of what the microservices or service-oriented architecture look like. Similarly, obviously providing the productivity tools, what you can use as of now as a developer. Also, being a cross-functional team, I don't say it is just the developer who has to do all heavy lifting. There will be cross-functional teams who will be working with, but knowing of these particular technology will help you obviously to build a right code, and obviously the shipping of the whatever we said as a business driver will be helpful with these particular tools and technologies. Okay, so now at our end goal for customer is not a know-how of product, not know-how of tools. At the end of the day, they are interested in what solutions you provide to them, right? So so while we build this innovative solutions, what is our thought process or what should be our thought process when? So think of customer, he may be having a one of, but maybe using one or the two of these cloud solutions. Maybe he might be on Azure and he might be using some of the microservice 365 collaboration or productivity tools. Okay, so but at the end of the day, the customer requirements keep on changing. So we have to think of from a complete approach. If we want to really build a solutions, it has to be across Azure. An application can go across these solutions, cloud solutions, right? And obviously identity and security will be a core for any particular customer requirements. So this is what this particular diagram shows to you, that irrespective of the work or product you might be working or you may be expertise on, having knowledge about other products is equally important. So if you see the key points here, available cloud services, we should know about that. Similarly, if we really want to deploy an apps in a less time, obviously we should know the way we have talked about our ARM templates, biceps, and the way we covered them, all of those tools, and the way we integrate and collaborate with those tools is very important. Right from our coding, if someone gives us the testing or integration, those all aspects also should be taken care while building this software quickly. It should be free from any flaws. So that is what also we have to take care of. So that is the reason we are taking so many tools and standardizing the approach so that when we actually work on the customer environment, our teams work on a standard tools first place, know of the technology, what is required by the customer, where the customer requirements fit. It may be one at this point of time, can be second at coming down few months, maybe heard at few years after. We can't say about that. That is obviously the ever changing, but at least we are making ourselves ready across the clouds so that while we develop our solution, we know what we can do with these solutions. Okay, hence about knowledge about the cloud services and obviously creating apps, operational excellence. This is more towards the DevOps and the ARM templates or whatever we've been talking about. And as we are working in hybrid and will be working in hybrid environment in future also, so the integration tools are equally important. Okay. Similarly, securing and data and application, whatever we'll be talking, shift left, like embed the security right from the beginning, then doing at the production and all those things obviously goes here. Okay, so rather than getting into the which products we'll be using or knowing, it is better to know those products ahead of time. So I would say a basic approach of technology will help here. Then to give you an approach you have to follow, say suppose this is one particular functional scenario. This is app plus DB. Okay, so now I have a customer from a manufacturing industry. Okay, so they are using some tool based products. They have some tools or products available on their websites that is created with the help of the front end using app services, and the data goes in SQL database, and they have some API layer to integrate with the backend legacy. So this is what you can see as a simple example. Now for us to make it more innovative, we also can provide, if we just want a subset of, say suppose I have one particular vendor, okay, from which I buy the raw materials. Okay, so for that I can go with a power apps for him to uh, submit the respective uh, all codes, and also provide me the what exactly the charges I can go and approve using the power apps rather than using the full-fledged apps. So these all things you can think of. It can be varied, like say suppose a financial industry can go for credit card related applications for a customer using power apps. I don't need to build a web platform. Obviously we will have the integration in that, but then for a customer today, app is better than going on the web, because that is very handy and available to us most of the times. Similarly, same manufacturing customer or the financial industry customer might be using some collaborative tools, right? Even the productivity tools from the M365. So, and as I said, supply chain management, the customers will be retaining, we will be retaining all the information about the customers in the Dynamics 365. And uh, so ideally what we are saying here is if we consider app plus DB as a functional scenario, it can be any of these clouds which we have been talking about. So development, if I am a developer, I can't say it is just the Azure I have to take care of. It can be Power Platform, it can be Microsoft 365, it can also be Dynamics CRM as well. So you have to make sure that you understand these tools and to what extent we can really build the products, because some of the products like Microsoft 365 as well as Dynamic 365, they are already available as a software as a service. The work which we can do or the IPs which we can release will provide a specific industry based solution than doing something on a pass which everyone can do uh, based on whether they have those templates available. So innovation is all about what we make for respective industry solutions, and those are very unique. If particular industry, if you take for manufacturing, financial, insurance, any industry you can talk about, think of what the prototypes they will require, and really they will be useful for other clients. If they are able to reuse this particular functional architecture, then obviously that makes sense to make this as an IP. Otherwise, while you develop this in your, even in the build stage, you have to really think about the next integration or next integration it can have at a future point of time. Okay, so this is one of the functional scenario you can have from app plus DB. Similarly, you are working on any analytics platform, so the data can come from any of the streams. For real time, it will be any of the IoT devices. For any of the unstructured data, it can be the images, video, audio, depending upon the use case. Similarly, it can be also the documents, JSON documents or any particular document structure. So this particular layer is actually the data layer which we are trying to ingest for analytics or do some kind of information gathering from these particular tools. And if you see the modern, as I already written, modern data warehouse and ML, what we're trying to do here is fetch information from them and make it available in data lake so that we can reuse that information or convert that what we call the ETL and ELT, depending upon how we want the destination data to be look like. And then obviously our machine learning models are also important for actually training based upon, say, suppose if anyone wants to have, I would again take the manufacturing industry example. I want do the prediction of the car price based upon the CC level and obviously the petrol, other variants. Similarly, the obviously the branding of the car. All those specifications can be put in that particular training algorithm. So once we actually train that algorithm and make it available for consumption, ready to build, so that will work as a direct as an end product for us. Now, if someone at the consumer end is actually looking at this particular model, he may not know all about this, what we are doing in the cloud. But for him, we can give him a simple Power App. Just put the specifications, which with the help of the Power Automate, it triggers the respective machine learning models. And based upon the stats, the way, as I said, the baselining of if it follows those specifications, what exactly the car he should buy or she should buy. So that will come the end product. For consumer, it is only this layer, consumption layer. But for us as a solution, this is a black box for him. And we will design this end to end. So this is what the value add while you do the development. Think about the different use cases. That is the reason I've shown you the functional scenario from modern data warehouse, which more towards analytics, and one is actual your production runtime environments, whether you are working with the customer data, whether you are working with the supply chain or service vendors. It can be any industry. Ideally, this fits, and there can be even more boxes depending upon what products you might be using. Hence, what we are saying is to build innovative solutions. First of all, knowledge of tools, whether we understand that particular technology very well, how are we going to integrate those technology tools? Hence, this all is helpful for us so that we can tie that complete solution together. And it will be obviously easy for us to make IPs if we know what is available to us out of box rather than searching for that at that point of time. Okay, so basic knowledge, and on top of that, how this works, integration, and to what level you can customize it to build your own IP. Whether they are available as a SaaS service, whether they are available as a PaaS service, and all those things. That also makes difference because obviously if they are available or consumable products from PaaS and SaaS, very little you can do. And on top of that, if you want to build your own IP, you really have to think about the extra configurations you want to embed in that. Okay, and similarly any analytics. Now this analytics, as I just talked to you about the car, right? Car price. For other product based company who is building the machine tools, he can keep the baseline of specifications as a reference, and then while the tools are built, they will be actually compared with the baseline of whether that meets the required specifications or not. Then that is how we do the quality checks. Okay, so this can be n number of functions from this particular modern data warehouse and ML scenarios which you can come across. And if you see at base, this is all across, right? Right from security towards monitoring and getting you automated. While obviously it is not possible for us to do the implementation, we need some templates which can do for us. So that is where our arm and biceps will be very helpful here from implementation per se. And finally, the hardening is if we want to have a complete structure in place, before we can actually do for the production work. Okay, so all hardening and everything can be done with the help of Azure policies and the similar tools. So for Azure policy may work on an Azure. So similarly, there are other security tools within M365 as well as Power Automate where you apply policies to harden those particular PaaS and SaaS environments. Okay, so team, just coming back to the our agenda, we covered business drivers from the stats, what we have seen from Forrester, and then we obviously gone through how the role looks like based on those business drivers. And for developer, know-how of technology and the standard tools. Improving productivity, obviously the automation is a key, DevOps, and then you have also look into some of the tools what we are available out of box to help you out. And finally, obviously the customer requires innovative solutions, not workloads. Or so for to build that, we need to have a complete knowledge about what is available in cloud and whether it fits with any of the SOA or microservice approach, or what we need to build on top of that, whether the low code will work here or whether the full-fledged applications on respective frameworks and language will work here. So this is how this particular session was for. Okay, so that's all I think I have to say for this particular session. While we come next time, I think 30th August, we will discuss more about how we actually develop the SOA and microservice. And this will be more deep dive looking into how we actually break the monolithic into the respective SOA and the microservice approach. And on top of that, how if we develop or build upon top of that, what is required for us to do. Again, the same standard tools, we will not change anything more on that. This session was to set the base context for you so that while you come next time, you already have those tools ready with you and we are ready to actually do the next step on top of that. Okay, so thanks a lot.